what does Jesus want from us? In Revelation chapter 3, verses 14 through 22, Jesus rebukes a church. they they think they're doing just fine. They're rich, they're comfortable, they have everything they need, and they think that means that God's happy with them, that they're on the right track. And Jesus says they aren't. He rebukes them. He calls them to repent. And then in our memory verse, he says this, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and eat with him, and he with me." The people that Jesus is talking to think they're doing just great, but they've actually shoved Jesus out of their church and out of their lives so that Jesus is banging on the door asking to be let in again. And in Jesus' invitation in this verse, we see what Jesus intends for our lives. Like if we would let him in and let him have his way with us, what would our life be like? I see 3 conversations coming out of this memory verse that answer that question of what does Jesus want from us? Well, first, Jesus wants us to live with an awareness of his presence. Second, he wants us to live with an awareness of his kingship. And third, he wants us to enjoy intimacy with him. In Revelation 3, these people are living their lives fat and happy, functionally not paying attention to Jesus at all. He's outside the door. And yet Jesus wants us to live with an awareness of his presence. As you discuss this with your class or household, think out loud together about how your lives would be different if you recognize this every day when you get out of bed, that Jesus is accompanying me. How would that affect your decisions, your attitude, your mindset? Jesus wants us to live with an awareness of his presence. But if Jesus lives with us and we're aware of that, let's remember who Jesus is. Who is Jesus? Jesus is the King. Revelation chapter 3 ends with Jesus talking about how one day he's going to sit on his throne in judgment. And Jesus wants us to live with an awareness of his kingship. As you discuss this with your class or household, talk about what it would be like if your boss or your teacher or a policeman, what if they were with you all day long, all the time? You'd constantly be on task. You would be very careful, wouldn't you? But what about the king? What if he was with you all the time? Now, I don't think this text is arguing that Jesus wants us to be paranoid, legalistic, or on task all the time, but he does want us living every day with his aims and goals in mind. We don't live for our purposes. We don't live for our kingdom. We live for his kingdom. Jesus wants us to live every day for his kingdom and his purposes. And the good news is that the king goes with us to empower us to do his work and to accomplish his purposes. Jesus wants us to live with an awareness of his presence and with an awareness of his kingship. But why is Jesus knocking on the door in our verse? What does he intend to do when he gets inside? Jesus wants to sit down and eat with his people. Jesus is the divine king of the universe, and yet he wants to have a deep sense of connection with us. And he wants us to feel the same. Jesus wants to enjoy intimacy with us. When you become a Christian, the goal is not to get comfortable and just wait for heaven. No, the goal is to get dialed in with Jesus, to be more connected with him than you are with any other person, that you are to be more connected with him than you are your spouse, your best friend, your closest companion. Jesus wants you to daily know him and trust him. He wants us to daily bear our burdens to him, to remember his love, and to find our comfort and purpose in him. What about you? Do you enjoy that kind of intimacy and love with Jesus? The people in our text didn't. They believed the gospel and then they got busy with other things. The invitation is to engage with Jesus deeply, day in and day out. I wonder, especially for those of you who have children, who've recently believed in Jesus, do they have a sense of that closeness and connection with him? Have they been invited into that? Have you modeled that for them? That would be an interesting conversation to have. What about you, adult? Do you have a sense that every day Jesus is sitting down with you, sharing his love, his will, his heart with you, and that you are doing the same? That is what Jesus wants from us. Yes, he wants us to live with an awareness of his presence and his kingship, but what is he like? He is a God and King who invites us to closeness, intimacy, and friendship. Do you know Jesus that way?